Welcome to Native Talk Arizona, Native Health's Native American Cultural Affairs program, presented by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. I'm Susan Levy. And the Native Nations National Program's vision is to create a national program that enables Native Americans to one day compete on the world stage as a sovereign nation. On the phone to tell us more about Native Nations is DJ Carrasco, founder and CEO, and Autumn Lopez, co-founder and program manager. DJ and Autumn, welcome back to Native Talk Arizona.
Great to be back. I had a great time last year and so excited to give everybody an update and the things to come.
Awesome. And Autumn, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be a first-timer.
All right. But before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourselves and your journey.
So Autumn and myself have taken this journey since we were actually 19 years old. Cruising Main Street in Safford, Arizona is where we met. And it has been a lifelong of baseball learning, giving back, creating, developing baseball programs around the world, as well as being fortunate enough to play at the major league level and kind of experience whatever young man and dream would be to play at that level. And so since then, we've created this program, and we've been very fortunate to be members of the WBSC now, which is going to create some huge doors for us to open. We have some charters now with Babe Ruth. We're looking to do the same thing in Little League and just provide opportunities for all our Native cousins across the country and have them be recognized in their own sovereignty in their own nations on a global stage.
That's awesome. And Autumn, anything you want to add?
Of course, just to kind of piggyback on what DJ said, we've obviously been doing this since we're 19 for many years. We've had interest. Obviously, DJ will tell you he's been working since he was 2 years old, and he threw his first rock that actually broke a windshield. And I like to go as far back and tell you that I started getting into health and being really into the body and what it does when my mom used to drag us to step and dance aerobics, which I loved. And I think that is really kind of lit the excitement and curiosity of to me of what bodies can do and how they can work even better when you treat them right. So meeting DJ at 19 was a little weird that it fit right into that, because I went at 19 learning how to take care of an elite athlete through massage and holistic health. So I'm very excited to be able to kind of bring what I've been crafting for many years now to the Native community through our baseball program.
Well, I'm so excited to hear what you've been up to, and I want to learn more. So, DJ, for those discovering Native Nations for the first time, what's the mission and the vision behind the organization? And we kind of heard what inspired you, but if you want to elaborate on that as well.
Yeah, so the vision is ultimately one day, hopefully, being in the Olympics as our own sovereign national team, and all native tribes across the country as a collective. There's a pathway to that, and we're the mustard seed right now. But I'll tell you what, we have a snowball that's just been it's been building much quicker than I anticipated it would. And so backing up, and how do we get there? How is that sustainable? There's over 100 countries in the world that have their own national programs and have the ability to get to the Olympics. And a lot of them have an infrastructure built, right? There's regional models, there's regional hubs that I can see our tribes being a part of and being these resources in every sport. I know basketball is king, but baseball and softball are not far behind that. And if all of our kids and our youth and quite honestly, our men and women have the ability to go to these places for elite level instruction and training and get together and compete, and so we can send the best team on the global stage. Like that is the mission, and that is the vision, to be represented across this country, this globe.
So you keep saying the word pathways. Is this a formal pathway to do this, or is it just kind of the way to get to that?
So I would like to. It's probably easiest to see it in stages, right? Stage one is we're a very small program. We're year one. The word has gotten out, but it's not across the country. It's not as big and as glamorous as it will be in the future. And so those pathways are starting off small with a national tournament. And then from that national tournament, we will select the best athletes to represent Native Nations in these World Series type events with Babe Ruth and some of these U.S. games. And in the future, that pathway will also have touch points around like young ages in T-ball, strength and conditioning, arm conditioning programs, nutrition, health, and wellness that Autumn will get into a little bit more. And so not only is it your dreams of being able to be a diamond sport athlete that are going to be tailored to, but it's also going to just create a great human, right? Discipline, teamwork, all these characteristics that go with learning from a young age all the way to when your career might be finished. So we're not just touching on the part between the chalk. We also focus on stuff that's outside the chalk, in the household, across the table, the mental awareness, the mental preparedness, and the health and wellness that comes with this.
That's awesome. All right. So how do you see that these pathways are going to create opportunities for Native youth, entrepreneurs, creators, and tribal communities through leadership, education, and capacity building? Is it through the discipline that you're proposing, or how do you see the structure of that?
Well, yeah, there's a lot. Like you really don't have to look any further than call it Team USA or Canada or Mexico, right? There's a pathway that they have to be able to represent to wear that USA jersey. Now, I think what we can do that's a little bit different is, we talk about community. Through economic impact, we can have our tournaments. We can, bring these type of events to different tribes across the country that can impact their local economy and their trades and their members. So that's one thing where not just directly to the athletes benefiting, but their communities can as well. And for those that can see the picture, like we've had media training classes for our athletes. We've had recruiting training workshops for our parents. So we try and touch the holistic part of the whole family and the community as part of what we're doing. Maybe you're not very good at the game of baseball and softball, but you have a passion for it and you want to be a trainer and you really like that portion of it. Well, we have the Major League Strength Coaches and Conditioning Association that's part of our support group, and they will help these type people that want to do that. Maybe you want to be an analyst. You're not good at hitting a fastball, but you know what? You love the numbers and the metrics nowadays that they gather, and there's formulas that are made off of these metrics. So there's a whole developmental process, not just for the person on the field, but also off the field. And into the home plates portion, if health and wellness is your gig, like we want you to be a part of this and draw from your experiences and be able to help our members all around.
Okay, so I'm going to bounce to Autumn on that one, right? So Autumn, can you tell us a little bit about the Health and Wellness Home Plates, what it is, what's the initiative, how does it support food sovereignty, wellness prevention, and community healing?
So Home Plates is really centered around holistic nutrition. So we're coming at it at a different angle. Most of the times when you go to your doctor, you get a dietitian, and they're great. There's no doubt that they are definitely moving the needle. But I like to approach it differently on the holistic side. So when I say that, what it really means is we're looking at people bio-individual. Everybody's different. Your disease is not the same disease. Your illness is not the same disease as the person behind you. So most of the time when you go somewhere and you've been diagnosed with diabetes or heart disease, you normally get the same pamphlet that the other person got before you and that the person after you is going to get. We look at nutrition differently. We want to sit down and we want to talk with you and the community. What are those concerns? What are you going through? What are some of your signs and symptoms that you're having right now? Because we truly believe it's not a one-size-fits-all. And that's been the problem for years, and probably why you see no change. Numbers are going up instead of going down, and that's because we have not treated people individually. Yes, we all have the same bodies, the same parts, but our reactions are different. So I like to sit down and talk to the communities and say, what are your needs? How are you feeling? To get a community's outlook on what they may want. But then when I work with them individually, whether it's parents and what their home needs, I want to know exactly what are some of your exposures? What are some of the foods, like you say, food sovereignty? Where do we live? What kind of access do we have to food? Because that creates a different problem for me as well. Like if you are in a rural community versus a city, what kind of access to food are you getting? Because that can contribute to what's going on in their bodies and what maybe they're struggling with or what they're having success with, depending on where you live. Are you in a community? I know myself, being where I'm from, it's very cotton fields. So I knew there was pesticides I was being exposed to. So these are things that are always looked at when you go places, of your exposures environmentally, what you can and can't have access to on food. And that contributes to some of the illnesses and diseases, or just fatigue or tired, even small things of how people are feeling. So I like to look at that and kind of help people learn there's a different way to approach this. It doesn't have to be, because what happens is they're like, wow, well, that didn't work for my auntie or my uncle or my mom and dad. So I like to give them a new way to look at it, which I think brings new hope. And then for our athletes, whether you are a Native American athlete or you're on Team USA, athletes automatically are already competing at a very deficient state. So I like to try to teach the athletes how to work with that. How do we prepare our bodies? How do we feel before these competitions, during these competitions, and then how do we recover afterwards? And it's still the same approach individually, even though they may be getting the same food. But what we do for home plates is we show up and we bring food to their dugout. We tell them why. It's not just eat this. Why are you eating this? What can it do? So there's always a lesson behind it. And the parents are actually watching that too. So I've had a lot of athletes work with me individually after the tournaments, and then their parents end up going on the same program. So it has created the domino effect. And it's been beautiful to watch, but that is just kind of home plates. We want to hear communities, we want to work with athletes, and we want to bring a new holistic view to it.
Okay. That sounds like a great idea. So I want to find out, I think you've got an event coming up in the next couple weeks. Is that correct, DJ?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, we actually have a few different events. Yeah, our 14 and under girls national tournament for the first time we're rolling out. It's going to be in Prescott, Arizona. That'll be on the 5th of June.
Okay.
6th and 7th, we will be selecting the best girls around to go ahead and represent Native Nations on that Babe Ruth World Series stage in Florence, Alabama, which is going to be fun. We also have a 12U team in the Diamondbacks tournament that we will be featuring. We had a showcase, and there are some studs on that team. So we encourage your listeners to come out and come check out Native Nations at the Intertribal Tournament. And then that second to last weekend, starting the 18th, we have our opening ceremonies at Salt River Talking Stick Fields. We're going to have some culture. Last year we had all the vendors out, so I encourage those vendors that were there, or if you want to be a part of that, to log on nativenations.org and come check us out. Well, that'll be a 4-day tournament, and it was just a blast last year again. We'll have a special adaptive learning game on the front end of that opening ceremonies with the city of Scottsdale that we're excited to roll out. We will also be broadcasted by the Gila River Broadcasting Network. That's also FNX will be carrying us. So if any of those listeners are out there that won't be able to make it to the game, please tune in, and you'll be able to catch that championship game and some of the B-roll footage from throughout the tournament. So really excited about those 3 events. And then lastly, in very end of July into August will be our World Series tournament in Branson, Missouri. And then I had already told you about the Florence one. I think that's going to be middle of July. I'm sorry, the boys is August 5th through the 15th, and the girls will be the end of July into August.
Okay, so we don't have a lot of time, but I do have a couple quick questions for you. One, in order to play, do you have to have a tribal ID or certificate of Indian blood, or is this self-identify?
Any kind of documentation that you are descendant, lineage, CBID, ID cards, we will accept.
Okay.
And I say that because if we do have a player without that and we were to get checked at like the Diamondbacks tournament, we would have to forfeit all our games.
Okay.
So it's just one of their rules that we have to go by as well.
Okay. All right. And then, so 14 and under means you can be the age 14, and then any age under that?
Yeah. Some of these kids are studs. I mean, we had a 12-year-old that was 6'3" already. So that kid can play with 14-year-old, no doubt.
Okay. So 12-year-olds, 13 and 14-year-olds. Okay. And then do you have to have a physical to play? Like, do you need an AIA sports physical, or is it just parent signature?
No physical, but you can be a free agent. And what I mean by that is if you don't have a team, because there's not a lot of full native teams, you could register as a free agent, and then we will put you on a team. And if you have a team and you might not have a full team, please register your team, and we'll give you some of those free agents. Also, coaches, you could register as a free agent. We would love to have people that know about the game come in and share your wisdom and knowledge. As last year we had over 70 free agent boys, and right now we're currently sitting at 40 free agent girls. So we do need coaches. If you can't commit to coaching and you want to scout and tell me who's the best on the field, we have a process that we use for other coaches to vote on the best players, as well as our scouts in the stands. So those are two other positions, or any volunteer in general. We would love to have be a part of these tournaments.
So you are looking for volunteers, ambassadors,
Yes.
right? Sponsors and partnership opportunities?
Yep. Any corporations or sponsors, that vendors, anything like that, capacity building opportunities that can help fund these kids' journey to the World Series. We're also looking for that. And again, all that information you can contact us if you go to nativenations.org and just navigate the toolbar up top. If you want to be a player, there's a tournament registration. If you want to be a sponsor, there's a place for that as well.
All right, DJ and Autumn, we are pretty much out of time. Again, one more time, your website?
nativenations.org.
Okay, and that's NA...
TIVENATIONS
Okay.
.org.
Okay, I just want to make sure it wasn't 7. Okay, all right. DJ and Autumn, thank you so much for coming on, and we know it's going to be another spectacular tournament, and we can't wait to get an update. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Coming up next on Native Talk Arizona, host Susan Levy chats with Jordan O. James, frontman for First Floor Highway. Support for KRDP 90.7 FM comes in part from Native Health, with 2 locations in Phoenix, 4041 North Central Avenue, Building C, near the corner of Central Avenue and Indian School Road, and at 8800 North 22nd Avenue. Native Health is also located in Mesa at 777 West Southern Avenue, near the corner of Southern Avenue and Extension Road. And Native Health provides primary medical services at the new Guadalupe Health Center, 6725 South Priest Drive in Guadalupe. Native Health provides primary medical, dental, behavioral health, WIC, and wellness services for the urban Native American community. For more information, call 602-279-5262 or visit our webpage at nativehealthphoenix.org.
Welcome back to Native Talk Arizona, Native Health's Native American Cultural Affairs program, presented by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. I'm Susan Levy. Now, First Floor Highway is a band out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, the music scene, and offering a unique pedigree of indigenous-inspired, sun-soaked rock and roll. On the phone, we have frontman Jordan O. James. Jordan, welcome to Native Talk Arizona.
Hey, Susan, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, your music is great, and I can't wait to learn more. But before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey and all of that.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jordan O. James. I use my middle initial all the time because there are 1,000 different Jordan Jameses out there in the world. I think there's a famous football player named Jordan James, and of course everyone compares who's the greatest basketball player, Michael Jordan or LeBron James. So if you try to Google me, it's tough. So I started using my middle initial so people could find me. I grew up in a tiny little res called Grand Portage. It's up along the north shore of Minnesota, just kind of out in the middle of nowhere. Our reservation is one of the few that actually shares a border crossing into Canada. And growing up, the closest grocery store to us was actually in Thunder Bay. So it's kind of an unusual situation crossing the border quite a bit for things. But I grew up in Grand Portage and a bunch of little towns along the North Shore there. I actually ended up in New Mexico for high school. I got shipped down for boarding school right at the tail end of the whole boarding school system when it was kind of transitioning over into the more modern college prep kind of style. So I ended up in Farmington, New Mexico, all the way from Minnesota. And after high school, came to UNM, University of New Mexico, got all my degrees from there. And as many New Mexicans will tell you, our state motto is the land of enchantment, but we jokingly refer to it as the land of entrapment. And I definitely got entrapped. I've been here in New Mexico since the 90s, got married, and never left. And so that's kind of my overall journey.
I like the land of enchantment and entrapment. So, all right. So how did you get started in music? And tell us about the name First Floor Highway.
Yeah, I mean, originally I got started just because on cold Minnesota nights, my dad would get together with friends and, they'd sing Beatles songs and sing wildly off key. And so I grew up kind of doing that thing in Minnesota. But ultimately what got me into music is very early on in college, guitar players are everywhere and songwriters are everywhere. And so the way I got into the music scene and playing music is I actually was a drummer for about 15 years, just supporting lots of different people's projects. And then ultimately what kind of led me over into starting my own band was the pandemic of all things. Right before the pandemic happened and lockdown and all that stuff, I was about to start my career as an assistant professor of research somewhere. And the two universities I was a finalist for, unfortunately, got canceled due to the pandemic and lockdown. And since it takes an entire year to get hired in academia, I just didn't want to drag my family through the uncertainty of that whole process again. So me and my wife were like, well, if we're going to stay here in New Mexico, let's live in a part of the city we want to live in. And so we moved downtown because I just really like the walkability, the fact that there's so many things close by, and all the neighbors down here were great. It's an old historic neighborhood. But unbeknownst to me, when I moved down here, my next door neighbor was actually a drummer. And during the pandemic and the lockdown, he was actually organizing Sunday driveway jams where he would invite a bunch of people, musicians over, and they would just set up in the driveway on Sundays and play for a couple hours. And then people from the neighborhood would bring out their lawn chairs and kind of socially distance, and everyone would just kind of hang out and listen to music. And so since he was already a drummer, there really wasn't anyone to kind of organize songs and say, hey, let's play this tune or let's play this tune. And so just basically based off of need, I switched over to vocals and guitar. And then after the pandemic kind of started loosening up and things opened back up, me and a couple of people who were always going to those jams ended up starting a cover band. And so for about a year, we played the local breweries and the local scene, just kind of doing that thing. And then somewhere along the way, everything just started to evolve where people wanted to start writing original music. So I started writing tunes. Being indigenous, just a lot of influence came into the songs that I was writing about topical material, indigenous slang, it's kind of made its way into the lyrics. And so I really got to give a shout out to my bandmates, Joey Monaco on bass, Dan Sanduis on drums, Daniel Coburn on lead guitar, and our former lead guitarist, Paul Milazzo, because, I can barely play guitar, I can barely sing in key. And so the whole band as a whole just really supports each other. So if someone's weakness is someone's strength, we help each other out quite a bit. And so that's how we got started. And then First Floor Highway, the name is a little bit of a play on indigenous creation stories. And everyone has their own various creation story, but kind of down here in the Southwest, the Navajos believe that they came up through different worlds. And so I kind of liked that idea of, us right now here being on planet Earth, kind of seeing this as like the first floor of something. So we took First Floor, and then highway kind of came into play because here in the Southwest, we just have endless highways where you can just drive into the sunset literally for hours before there's even a turn in the road. And so it just kind of matched what we were doing, with the indigenous influence coming into the songwriting, the fact of being down here in the Southwest, and just the idea of just driving forever on an endless highway. And so that's kind of how the name came about.
I like that. I like that. All right. And I think it was really interesting that serendipitous that your next door neighbor was the drummer and you did all of that during lockdown and kind of came together and got new bandmates. What a great story.
as you know, growing up on the res, there's only two ways to do things. You either pay someone to do it or you do it yourself. And so since no one else was really stepping up, I just did it myself. And so that's just kind of the impetus of everything.
All right. So what bands or artists do you all draw inspiration from?
Honestly, anything and everything. So, everyone in the band listens to a wide range of music, so we're all bringing in our different influences. And my personal playlist will literally jump from like Marvin Gaye to Slayer to Miles Davis to Nine Inch Nails. And so, being musically inspired, you just know when something grabs you. It doesn't matter if it's an catchy electronic drum beat from a Nine Inch Nails song, or it's the soul that Miles Davis is pouring into a certain note. You just know it when you hear it. And so kind of what we draw inspiration from is the fact that just everyone is so influenced by different things. When someone starts writing a song, you can kind of go, you know what, I actually really like this one country band, and I'm kind of hearing like a country twang in there. And so they'll kind of add in these components. And so we just kind of take anything that we're kind of hearing by ear. And I got to say, at least that's one cool thing I will admit about modern music streaming, is that if you just like one song, you can play that one song, and then the algorithm starts feeding you all this great stuff you might have never heard before. Back in the day, you had to wait for an older brother from some friend of yours to be like, oh, you like this band? Oh, no, that's nothing. You got to listen to this record. And then they let you borrow that record, and you're influenced by something else. And so I will admit that at least the evils of modern music streaming, that is one good thing. And so we just kind of lean into those influences and kind of were inspired by anything that grabs us in the moment.
And I remember those days of having to borrow albums and all of that. And yes, the music streaming, it makes it much easier. You can listen to a lot more things. You don't have to buy everything. So
yeah, I remember waiting up until like 11 o'clock at night because the DJs would do less speaking before the songs, and you would just be there at the tape deck ready to hit record. And if someone said, oh, I recorded a copy of Led Zeppelin's whatever, and there was no DJ talking, and so I got the full intro. And so that's how we used to share music.
Yeah, 8 tracks and cassettes and yep, yeah. long time ago. All right, I'll stop talking. All right, so tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind your debut album, Under the Sun.
Yeah, so when we were writing songs, Under the Sun is actually the name of a song on the album as well. It was written by our bassist, Joey Monaco. And so he brought in his bass line, grooved on it, and within seconds, the first verse just kind of fell out of my head. And it's such a great tune, the way it came together, that it just kind of really represents musically what we're trying to do. And so it was really worth naming the album after. So the inspiration for the album itself, we were honestly really trying to create a specific identity for us. Because one thing that I will say that is a little common in Indian country is that, the vast majority of bands are either metal, blues, rap, or reggae. And so when we were kind of crafting the album, we were really trying to be conscious of like, hey, there's a little bit of a gap here. There really is no like traditional American rock and roll, that classic sound of just a Fender tube amp cranked to give you that really great kind of gainy tone. And so when we were putting the album together and just having very early conversations, we just specifically thought, hey, we really want to try this rock and roll sound, and all of our influences kind of came into it. And then, of course, just being the primary songwriter and the lyricist, you just naturally bring in your Indian identity into the songwriting, without necessarily being explicit about it. So that's kind of why we coined our own little term for it. We're indigenous and spirited. We're not trying to make a statement that we are an indigenous band because I'm the only indigenous member in it. But, when you're inspirited by things or inspired by things, you can bring in your identity without it being a statement to every single thing you do. And so Under the Sun is an album that really does justice to this concept of being an indigenous and spirited band, without proclaiming it as a definitive statement. And so that's kind of where Under the Sun came about.
All right. Well, how long did it take to write and produce then Under the Sun?
The album itself took about 6 months just because all of us are working stiffs. We refer to ourselves as weekend warriors just because that's really the time you can get away from family and jobs and everything to really sit down and write music. So the album itself took about 6 months to record. The songs itself, I mean, sometimes a song would literally fall out within seconds and we immediately had something. Sometimes it took weeks where someone would bring in a tune and then someone would be like, I really like it, but it's just missing something. And then we would go back and forth on things for a while. So sometimes it's instantaneous and sometimes it takes a little while. You know, you can always tell when things are working well because usually right after you finish a song, you know, you just see smiles on everyone's faces. And it's like, can we try that again? And so you kind of immediately know you're on to something.
So where did you all record this one? Was it in Albuquerque?
It was in Albuquerque. So again, kind of growing up on the res and just not having a lot of money, everything I've done in my whole life has just really been in that kind of punk rock spirit of DIY, you know, do it yourself. Don't wait for someone to come along. Don't pay a bunch of money because you usually don't have a bunch of money to go and record. And so the entire album is actually recorded here at my house. You know, being in the Southwest and being in an old historic neighborhood, what is now my garage actually used to be a horse barn or a horse carriage house from the 1930s. So we record in an old stucco adobe building that was built in 1935 to originally house horses. So we actually made the entire album in there.
But I assume it doesn't look anything like the way it used to, right? It's now a studio?
Oh, no, you can definitely still see the adobe walls in there. And so, and honestly, I was inspired by this band called Khruangbin. They're out of Texas, and they're kind of a Thai funk instrumental band. But I was reading an interview with those guys, and they were talking about their recording process. And they basically record in an old barn out in the middle of nowhere with the barn doors just wide open, you know, looking at the fields, looking at the mountains, and literally cows would wander into the recording space. And so after I kind of read that interview, it just kind of really inspired me to be like, hey, these records these guys are making sound amazing. And the fact that they're recording them, you know, in a place that they feel comfortable in and just inspires them, you know, just where it's at and what they can see. I kind of took that to heart, and I was like, you know what, we could do the same thing here in the Southwest. And so, yeah, so it's not a formal studio. You can literally still see the original adobe bricks, you know, behind the plaster in the room. So it's total DIY, old school microphones, moving blankets, foam pads, all that good stuff.
And then I know that you said you all have other jobs as well. Did you go back to teaching?
So I still teach at the University of New Mexico, but now I'm just a lecturer. There's an old school university philosophy that's, you know, been around since like the 1400s, where you cannot be a tenure track professor at the same university you get your PhD from. You have to go somewhere else to start your career. And granted, there's exceptions to that. It doesn't apply across the board. So for me to stay here in Albuquerque, I could not be a tenure track professor at the university. So I still teach as a lecturer. You know, I still teach evening classes to undergrads and grads. It allows me to stay really connected to the community, which is something I really enjoy.
So tell us a little bit more about the lead single, Grand Entry. Is that off the powwows?
Yeah, so if there is such thing as a magnum opus, you know, about what we're trying to do, Grand Entry is definitely our song that encapsulates that. So the tune was kind of inspired by Keith Sikola's Indian Cars song. You know, back in the day, he was kind of referring, you know, what it's like being on the powwow circuit and driving around to all these powwows and just kind of all the messaging he put into those lyrics. And so kind of in that line, I was like, well, what would it look like if you were to kind of write a contemporary powwow circuit tune? You know, now that everyone has cell phones and there's all this stuff going on, you know, everyone's sharing memes online about, you know, with various Indian slang and whatnot. And so I even shout out Keith in the beginning of the second verse. Keith, I hear that Keith is going to make another powwow tonight, which is a reference to his song. And then me kind of finishing the story by saying, I don't think I'm going to make it. I'm not feeling right. So, you know, the song is just kind of wrapped up in this idea of what it is to kind of be a contemporary Indian traveling around regional powwows, you know, maybe posting pictures of you partying at the 49 when you really shouldn't be doing that, getting in trouble because your hotel party got a little too wild. And there's another phrase I reference in there about, I wish there was something more than just sweetgrass and vibes. So it's just kind of a comment on just kind of what it would look like to be a modern person kind of traveling around the powwow circuit. And then the song itself, I mean, the opening guitar riff, I mean, you just can't get any more rock and roll than that riff. If there was ever a song that really captures what we're trying to do, that song is definitely it.
So is that one your favorite?
You know, I've got to say that every new song we write is our favorite. I think it's just part of being human, right? We're just naturally wired for short-term rewards. So, you know, every song that you come up with is just immediately your new favorite song. And not to say we dismiss our older songs. I mean, we still love those tunes. We still put the same amount of effort into them when we play them live. I mean, just because they're older and we've played them 1,000 times doesn't mean we put anything less into them. But I honestly think it's just something about the natural human thing where you're excited about the latest thing. You know, and overall, it's what keeps life interesting. You know, it's like every time a new restaurant opens in town, it's the hottest thing for a few months, and then, you know, eventually people move on. So I think we're just programmed that way. So every new song we write is always immediately our favorite song.
How many songs have you all written totally?
There's 11 on the album, and we actually have about 6 new songs that we're going to be releasing as singles all throughout the summer. So right around the beginning of every month, we're going to be putting out a new single. And so I'd say somewhere we got about maybe 16, 17 original tunes total.
That is great. I did see, I was looking at your website and I was listening to your music, which I really enjoyed. But I did notice that you do a lot of, you play a lot in Albuquerque. Do you ever kind of venture out to other parts of the Southwest?
Well, we've been waiting to venture out until we had a record to support. And so this year's the first time we're actually starting to play more statewide festivals, kind of also in the spirit of Indigenous DIY, you know, rather than waiting for shows to come to us. What we started doing also is we started reaching out to other Indigenous and non-Indigenous bands and actually held special shows with the 3 of us and 3 different bands. And so we had folks out from Oklahoma City and Phoenix and whatnot. And kind of what we always say is, you know, hey, if you guys ever want to put this show together out in Phoenix or, you know, out in Oklahoma City, you know, we'll obviously trade shows and come out to you. So we've honestly just been kind of waiting for a record to support, and you'll definitely be seeing us more around the Southwest for sure.
That's awesome. And maybe this will help and somebody will give you a call and say, hey, coming out to Phoenix or Flagstaff or Tucson and see what's going on out here.
Hey, you never know.
Let's hope so. So now that you've released your debut album, what's next? I know you said you have 6 more songs that you've created that you're going to be releasing every month. But where do you see it in the future? Like in a year, are you going to do another album? Are you thinking just expanding the touring? I know you're teaching. What does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, for the future, we wanted to do an album first, so that way we had something to support on for a little while. But mainly the thing is definitely releasing singles all throughout the summer And then, kind of keeping in indigenous traditions, once winter comes around, that's the time for storytelling. And so we're kind of holding off on writing maybe another album worth of tunes or getting a bunch of other singles together to start releasing next summer. So we're kind of just getting through the summer with the stuff that we have right now, and we'll kind of see what the winter brings as far as releasing new material and what's next for us. Definitely more touring, definitely getting out of town as much as we can.
So, Jordan, how do you incorporate your Indigenous background into your music, recordings, performances, writing?
Well, I mean, the main thing that we kind of do is we definitely don't proclaim ourselves as a statement band, meaning that, we're not kind of following some previous models like Indigenous, the blues band, or Blackfire, the all native punk band. And so the reason we kind of use that term, we're Indigenous in spirit, is because we're not trying to make a statement that, everyone in the band is Indian, every song is about Indian issues, this is all we talk about. So the reason we use Indigenous in spirit is because, some of the songs we play and write and the lyrics that are in there, they can definitely just simply be a mix of classic rock and roll style tunes that don't necessarily represent the Indian experience. So for example, like songs like 49 or Grand Entry, those ones really do contain lyrics and tell a specific story about kind of, contemporary Indian issues and things. And then there's songs like Nothing to Prove, which uses Indian slang to express emotions and concepts, but, the whole song isn't necessarily an Indian theme. And so, like, for example, in Nothing to Prove, there's a line in the chorus where, rather than just writing a traditional line that says, how happy you are, how much you're in love with someone, there's a line in there that says, you got me singing 49 and howling at the moon. So it's more of like a shout out rather than a song all about an Indian story. And then we have, just classically structured rock and roll tunes like These City Streets is just a song about wandering around an urban area, and feeling a little lost, so there's nothing specifically Indian about that, and the lyrics don't really reflect it, but I could definitely add that when I wrote that song, it came from a place in my heart about being an urban Indian and just feeling a little spiritually disconnected from the res and just from kind of traditional experiences. You're just kind of a little lost among the neon, glass, steel, and concrete. So you could definitely interpret it that way, but it's not really, you would never know that based off the lyrics. And so when we perform, we're also not really being explicit about what we are. So, you won't find me out there with a wide brimmed, open crown hat, just absolutely dripping in turquoise and silver bracelets, pretty much it's just blue jeans and t-shirts. And, I'll wear a choker or a beaded medallion that represents my tribe and kind of general Indian culture. But again, it's subtle because we're not trying to really make a definitive statement about, being an Indigenous and spirited band. So that's kind of how my background makes it into everything, whether it be the recordings or the performances.
So when do you think you'll know, or when will you feel like you've made it? I mean, is it like if you're, I don't know, driving down the highway and you hear something playing, one of your songs on mainstream radio, or if you're at a party and somebody says, hey, I heard this great band, First Floor Highway. I mean, when do you think you're going to feel like, wow, I really did that and I'm successful and I'm a successful musician?
I honestly feel that way every day. So for me, I know a lot of really great musicians, like, people in their bedrooms that can play the solo to like a 18-minute Rush song perfectly, but they never perform. You try to like jam with them and they don't know how to play with a real drummer. They're just so used to the recording. And then, just naturally being a sonic artist, lots of artists just sit on their artwork thinking, this isn't ready for release. I just need to make this one more change, which you may never do. And so there is just so many artists out there that are great, but they don't get anything out into the world. And so for me, I feel like I've made it and I'm successful every single time I put sonic art out into the world. And everyone in the band really feels this way because they've also had experiences where, they spent 3 or 4 years in a different band, saying, oh, we're going to record, or, oh, we're going to do this, and then they never do it. Unlike us, for example, we have a show coming up tomorrow during the Gathering of Nations, and we're playing 2 new songs that maybe we've played 3 or 4 times. But the fact that we're not sitting on them saying we got to wait till it's perfect before we can play it. No, we're just going to get it out there. And so I honestly feel like I've made it and I'm successful all the time. Because if you listen to the record, I mean, I am certainly not God's gift to singing. And so there are some times where you will hear me sing wildly off key for just half a second. But the fact that I get it out there and just release everything in its ugliness, I mean, to me, that just makes me feel successful. So
I think that's a good measure of success, and I like I like that you've got the courage to do it, and you do it, and you're proud of it. And I've listened to your stuff; I think it's great. I didn't hear anything off key, so I don't know. I was pretty impressed.
You're too kind.
No, I liked it. All right, so if people want to find your music, is it on different platforms or website, or how would they find all of the different things? And then also, you're talking about those 6 new songs that you're going to be releasing. Where can people find those? And I know you said summer, but does that mean like the first day of each month or the middle of each month? Or how do they find out when that's going to be and how to get those?
Sure. So years ago, I started my own publishing company because I wanted to protect all the legal rights to my music, anything that I was putting out there. So right now, you can find us everywhere you consume music. It doesn't matter if it's Spotify, YouTube, whatever it is. New music will definitely be on all of those traditional platforms as well. The only thing you can't really control very well as an independent artist is when songs finally pass all the legal checks. Because every song basically has its own special serial number that identifies the publishing rights of that song. And so sometimes that could take a few days to go through the legal process. Sometimes it takes a few weeks. It just honestly depends on how many people are publishing music in that given moment. So I wish I could say it's available on the first of every month. We're definitely always shooting for the first week or 2 of every month. So you can definitely find new music online. And then also just keeping in the spirit of the traditional Indian giveaway, you can download all of our music for free on our website. Just Google First Floor Highway. The website pops right up in the search results. And aside from downloading the new full-length album, Under the Sun, you can also download any singles we put out over the summer there as well.
That's pretty cool. I never knew that you had to wait for a serial number for songs. So yeah, I learned something new today. I did not know that. I thought you just like upload it and then it goes live, but obviously there's a lot more legalese to that. So
well, you can if you don't really care about collecting royalties and all that stuff. And granted, the royalties are abysmal. I mean, I think we literally make a tenth of a penny every time the song is streamed on Spotify. So someone has to listen to one song 10 times just for us to make a penny. So if you're not interested in collecting those little royalties, then sure, you can just put it online and do whatever you want with it. But, if you want to protect your intellectual property and track all this stuff, then yeah, there's a whole process.
Well, and I'm assuming you want to. You wouldn't want anybody to take your lyrics or anything else that you've created and you've worked hard on it, sure. And you're proud of it. All right, so we're pretty much out of time, but I wanted to find out, so how can listeners find more information about First Floor Highway and how can they contact you, whether it's website or social media or both?
Yeah, I mean, as much as I dislike social media, and I honestly wish I did not have to engage with it, I don't have my own personal account. I don't post anything on there. We do play the game as much as necessary. So our Instagram account is the most immediate thing that we use for publishing information about upcoming shows and such. But if you want the most bang for your buck and you want to learn the most about First Floor Highway, see all the pictures that we publish online, access all of our videos and music, the website's definitely the way to go for all that good stuff.
All right, and that would be the way to contact you as well, is through that?
Yep, my phone number's on there, my email's on there, so you can definitely contact me through there, no problem. And honestly, you can honestly reach out about anything, just naturally being an educator. I mean, if you're a fellow Indian musician and you have questions about how to get your music into the world, you're wondering how you approach things, how you do protect, legal rights for your music, you can definitely drop me a line as well. I'd be happy to talk to anybody about that.
That's awesome. That's very nice. Jordan, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. I wish you the best of luck and success, and I hope you get to Phoenix so I can come see you, but I wish you best of luck with this new album.
Thanks, Susan. You're awesome. Your program is awesome. Javier, I appreciate you pushing all the buttons in the background. I really appreciate what you guys do.
Thank you for listening to Native Talk Arizona, presented by Native Health and 90.7 FM KRDP. Our executive producer is Susan Levy. Sound engineer is Javier Quiroga. We hope you will tune in again next week. If you have any questions, please reach us at nativetalkaz@listen2krdp.com.